Hey guys, it's Kevin with MixCoach. This is the third episode of the MixCoach Minute. The MixCoach Minute is where I answer questions from my members and subscribers that if we were just sitting here in two chairs talking. So that's kind of what I'm doing. MixCoach Minute is brought to you by, I've always wanted to say that, is brought to you by MixCoach Member, where you can get some really, really good training, get with a really great and helpful community of mixers just like you. I found that my mixers who have been MixCoach members for a while, their mixes consistently are getting better. And anyway, I think it's something that you should look at. MixCoachMember.com. Okay, let's get to the question. Stephen Borden says, hey Stephen from LA, he says, how do you blend a smack track, which is what I call parallel compression? I usually smack the drums and add it back to it. It's parallel compression. He says, how do you blend a smack track without getting it too loud? And do you EQ the return to highlight the effect? Stephen, it really depends on what you want to do with the smack track. On some songs that I really want it to be really like aggressive and like snarl at you like that, I use more of it. It just depends on how good you have the smack track sounding. Some days I do better than others. Some compressors do better than others. So it really depends how much. But typically on a more of a subtle mix where I'm not trying to say, hey, he added parallel compression. And sometimes you do want to do that, but on the mixes that I don't do that on, sometimes what I'll do is I'll actually listen to the smack track by itself and EQ and compress the smack track as if it were the only drum track. So I try to make it stand on its own. One of the things that bother me about the smack track, and one of the reasons I don't use a whole lot of it on the whole drum kit, is that the cymbals get washed out, and that's a pretty good indicator that you used too much compression on the drums. But sometimes what I'll do is I'll send a bus out into the smack track, and I won't send cymbals. I'll only send kick, the kick in and out if I have both of them. The snare top, hardly ever send the bottom. And the toms, and usually toms after I process them. In other words, after I gate them or have EQ'd them or gated them or sliced them out to where they're clean if I do that. So I usually only send kick, snare, and toms. I don't even send room to that. I don't send cymbals, in other words. I don't send overheads and I don't send hi-hat because that's the part that sounds washy. So that helps me get a good balance to the compressor so that it sounds natural. And then as far as EQing it, I usually don't EQ it a lot to maximize the effect. But what you want to do is make sure that it will sound good on its own. And then when you add it back to the track, usually what I'll do is I'll slide it up and I'll get it to where I think it needs to be, and then I'll mute it. And if I miss it, that's when I know that it's on the threshold of being where I want it to be. Now from there on, it's how much what your taste is of how much you want to smack it. So what I'll usually do to make sure that the blend is right, usually what I'll do is I'll slide it in there to where I think it needs to be, and then I'll mute it. And when I miss it, I did the same thing with reverb, as a matter of fact. I'll mute it, and if I miss it, I know I'm in the ballpark of where I want to be. Now, that's if you want to be subtle. If you want to be extreme, of course, you can use mostly smack and just a little bit of drums. But just real quick for the guys that don't know what parallel compression is, I actually learned this from a friend of mine several years ago. I think back in '93 or '94, and he did it. His name is Steve Marcantonio. Steve, if you're listening, thank you. I love this trick. He used compression like an effect, like you would a reverb, and he set it up the same way. And he would compress a drum kit and add it back to the drums. And what the advantage was you didn't get the artifacts from the compressor when it came to the attack, only the release. So your uncompressed drum signal was what gave you the attack, and the compressed signal was what gave you the release. So the combination of both of those was just a big, huge, fat drum sound. And he also did the same thing, parallel compression, with piano. He used an aural exciter, or maybe it was a BBE maximizer, but he would process the piano to where it was very bright, and then he would add that processed piano back to the piano. So, and the same thing, I've done that before too. I don't think I've done that. I think he does that more than I do. Just mute it, and when you start to miss it, you know you're in the ballpark, and that way you know that it's not taking over your track or anything like that. But Stephen, I hope that helps. Let me see, make sure I got your question. I think I covered everything on your question, so that's how I would blend a smack track in to make sure that it doesn't take over a track. So if you get a chance, go by a MixCoach member and check out what we have to offer there. There's hundreds of members, great mixers. You will learn as much from them as you will from me. So check it out, and I'll see you on the next episode of the MixCoach Minute. Thanks for watching. Bye.